Hello everyone, Trophy Wine Hunter. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm doing a review of the flagship wine from Veuve Clicquot. It's their 2015 Grande. I've previously done other videos on Veuve Clicquot and the story, but I think it's such a good story that I want to kind of retell it here in this video instead of asking you to go to my previous videos. And especially it's very relevant because of upcoming Mother's Day. Veuve Clicquot Ponsardin was a champagne house that was founded in 1772 by Philippe Clicquot. And at that time, it was just called Clicquot Champagne. And he retired in 1801 and then sold his business to his son, Francois Clicquot, who had just married his wife, Barbe Nicole Ponsardin, in 1798. And so in 1805, Francois died of typhoid at the age of 30. And the brother wanted to liquidate the business because he didn't know anything about champagne. But Barbe Nicole, or now the widow, called Veuve, and that's where Veuve Clicquot and her last name Ponsardin, that's where it comes from, decided that she wanted to run the business. And again, you have to understand the context of this. This is a 28-year-old widow who's just been married for 6 years, who has a daughter that's 6 years of age, who knows nothing about the business, in an age when everyone in business, particularly in the wine business, was male. At that time, Napoleonic Code prohibited women from working, voting, earning money, or entering in schools or universities without the consent of the husband or father. But there was an exemption for widows, and that's how that happened, that she was allowed to do that first. But she actually wanted to do this. And everyone told her, you shouldn't do this, you're gonna lose all your money, you're a widow, you've got a young child. She didn't believe any of them. And such strength of this Veuve Clicquot, or widow Clicquot, was she decided to complete an apprenticeship course, and then in 1810, she re-established the company as Veuve Clicquot Ponsardin. And she became the first woman to own a champagne house and the first woman champagne producer. In that time, the vast majority of the exports of champagne were outside of France. And at that time, there was a conflict between Russia and France. And there was blockades that blocked the shipment of wine to Russia. And in fact, Russia had banned all French products. But she was very savvy, and she just thought that this, people love champagne. So I don't care. I'm going to figure out a way to get the champagne to Russia. She somehow got it through, and she got her wines into Russia. And the Tsar actually loved her wines and appreciated her persistence and her intention. So as she was right, the French-Russian conflict eventually was kind of passed. Napoleon was defeated and the French monarchy was restored, and the Russians were so appreciative of her friendship during the war that Tsar Alexander's first brother declared that Veuve Clicquot champagne would be the only champagne that the Russian royalty would drink. And that's where this connection between royalty, celebrations, and high society began with Veuve Clicquot and the Russian Tsar. But she was also not just a business savvy person. She was really technical too. So she's responsible for the riddling table. And prior to that time, they had invented champagne. But champagne was mostly cloudy because with champagne, you have the dead yeast that ferments, and it just was stuck there. And in fact, before that, before the riddling process, they had to kind of take the champagne out, put it into somewhere else, rebottle it, and then, to clear it out, to kind of get rid of all the, cloudiness or the dead yeast. And that took manual labor, so that was a lot of work. So she somehow invented this technique of riddling, which is basically she put the bottles upside down, then turned them, and she figured out all the dead yeast would go to the top of the bottle. She would take out the cork eventually, and then whatever came out, she would replace it with extra spirit and then rebottle it. And so that did two things. One, it allowed for champagne to be clear. And two, it allowed it to be kind of quickly mass produced. It was much easier to do this than to physically kind of transfer wine into another bottle and then re-cork it again. I believe they were also the first champagne to put in vintage champagnes, and they were the first champagne house to do rosé. And the other thing is that she was also innovative about the label. So the label, the orange label, is iconic. You'll see it in their regular non-vintage champagne. So when Philippe Clicquot started producing champagne, he sold champagne with no labels, and most champagne houses had no labels. They just marked their initials on the box or on the label. You'll see that with some of the Lafite sold to Jefferson. It's not really a label; it's just a mark or just handwritten on there. She actually designed the first labels to be used for champagne. And she wanted to make sure, because most champagne in the 1800s was very sweet, even sweeter. I know a lot of people think some champagnes are sweet. The champagnes in the 1800s were much sweeter, almost like dessert wines. Hers was a dry style. And in order to kind of distinguish that, she wanted to make sure that people understood. So she had her label was orange. And so that distinguished it. Their flagship wine is Le Grande, and it's named after Madame Veuve Clicquot. And it is only made about 3 times every decade. The first vintage was in 1972, and this is the 24th vintage of this wine. And so Veuve Clicquot produces, obviously, their non-vintage champagne, which many people are familiar with. And, again, it's about stylistically what champagnes you like. And it's not about, good or bad champagnes, because most champagnes that are produced are fairly decent. It's just about stylistically what you like. Veuve Clicquot's style, it uses predominantly red wine grapes, like their Pinot Noir. So that might be a style that you enjoy. Likewise, there's certain wines like Ruinart that use Blanc de Blanc, only Chardonnay. There's traditional champagnes that use the traditional blend of fairly equal Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and Chardonnay. So it's not about good or bad, it's about what preference that you have. So I do strongly suggest that people kind of try different champagnes, and there are differences, right? It's not like every champagne is the same. So Veuve Clicquot is known for its red wine or Pinot Noir grapes to be used in their champagnes. It comes from a blend of 8 Grand Cru vineyards, and some people will ask, well, will they ever maybe produce a champagne that's 100% Pinot Noir? They have said no, and I think partly that little bit of Chardonnay brings a little acidity into the champagne, which they like. They also have, in line with her innovation, they always do kind of specialized boxes and special things with their wine. So this year, they've done a specialized box. There's 6 different special boxes that are designed by Paola Paronetta, who's a very famous design person. So they're in different hues, and this one is one of them. So it's very attractive, and they always have these type of labels. Because they're always innovating, because that's the spirit of Madame or Veuve Clicquot. And so the innovations that they do, they always produce these really magnificent boxes. These are kind of collector things. They're kind of neat to store the champagne and keep them cold, but I love collecting these boxes. They come out, we're usually around Christmas time. This is another one that's really neat. And these are just continuing the spirit of innovation that is characteristic of Veuve Clicquot. Let's taste the champagne. I'll let you know that I did open this with friends and we had it over the course of the night. We just sipped it, then we had it with some fruits and then some nuts. It was really delicious. It paired well with everything. It paired very well with a little bit more substantial food like Chinese food. It'd be perfect. So let's get to the tasting of this. On the color, you can tell it's kind of a straw yellow, so it is very young. You can see that in the glass. It will, as it ages, it will kind of darken in color. It's amazing to say that this is 2015. It's a 9-year-old wine and I'm calling it young. But I think with this type of quality of wine, I think it can age probably another 10 years easily. On the smell, you get kind of some tropical fruits. I would say apples, like granny apples, but you also get some blackberry notes to it. And that is from the Pinot Noir grape, I think. But very aromatic, not as citrusy as you see with the regular non-vintage Veuve Clicquot, and not as sugary, I would say, not as sweet in terms of the elements. You see some white flower elements in this also. On the taste, it definitely is a little bit more substantial in terms of the weight compared to the non-vintage Veuve Clicquot. So by comparison, I find the non-vintage Veuve Clicquot is, the regular label is a little bit sweeter. This is a little bit more substantial. Again, the taste profile, like apples, apricots. And then on the end, you get some yeastiness, some brioche. And then particularly if you have it with fruits, you get a little ginger at the end of this. But it's got a good weight. It is not as acidic as you find with non-vintage champagnes. A little bit more serious and a little bit more balanced. And you'd expect this because this is a more expensive wine. It's a flagship wine. So very balanced, easy to drink. And I think sometimes when people talk about non-vintage champagnes or just entry-level champagnes, it's very acidic and very citrusy. That's all they see. And sometimes they don't like this. And just fruity. This is not that. It's much more substantial. It's more yeasty, bready, maybe even a little bit of walnuts, but like gingery. It doesn't have that just citrus component. It's more towards like apples, and then also kind of black fruit, like blackberries, that type of fruit in the aftertaste. I really like this. It's something for your cellar. You can drink it right now. It's very pleasing, but you can also wait on this. I can tell you that I like this more than the vintage champagne that I reviewed. My rating of this wine is going to be 93 points at this point, but it's mostly because it's really, really young. And I think it can it will increase in score as it ages a little bit more. The Wine Spectator rating is 95 points. I don't disagree with it, but I just think this is a little bit young and it hasn't hit its peak yet. I would give it a couple more years. I like a little bit of age on this wine, and I think it will develop some tertiary flavors and aromas, like maybe caramel, kerosene, a little bit more oakiness, nuttiness. So it'll be a very interesting champagne to drink, but I really like this as the flagship wine from Veuve Clicquot. I'm a big fan of this wine now, and I'm so glad I had a chance to drink this. Hope you've enjoyed this review. Until next time, happy drinking.